All right, welcome back to another week of social determinants of mental health. Before we get discussing some of these points, let me give you some updates on the logistics of the class. I know there's some confusion. Look, this is the first time for me too. I'm not a big internet guy, but we're making the best of it. I've been answering, between myself and Kelsey, we've been answering your questions quickly so you can kind of tell, and we've been sending a lot of announcements so you can keep up with things. But just to be clear, a couple of announcements. First of all, this week, we will adjust the schedule today. So the schedule will be updated and put up there. We just got confused between that first week. What's the first week? What's the second week? So here's what you need to do for this week. This Wednesday, right now is Monday. This Wednesday, you do have a test. Look, good news and bad news. You know, right? The bad news is I'm a fucking scatterbrain, okay? It is what it is. The good news is I'm not picky. So I'm not going to time the exam. It's not going to be up there for like 2 hours and you have to get it done. I know a lot of you work, you have kids, you work for a living. The exam will be due Wednesday at midnight, by midnight, right? So let's say 11:59 on Wednesday, you have to have the exam finished. But you'll have all day to do it. And just in case, you will have 2 attempts. In case your internet crashes, you have a problem with the internet, you don't need to hassle me, you'll have 2 attempts to get it done. That will be due Wednesday. This Friday, which is July 23rd, so July 22nd, sorry. So thank you, Kelsey. July 20th, Wednesday is your exam. July 22nd, assignment 2 and discussion 2 are due, okay? That's this Friday. Whoa. So this Friday, assignment 2, discussion 2, this Wednesday, you'll have your first exam, which will be all online, and you just need to get it done by the end of the day on Wednesday. Yeah, Kelsey, what?
Chapters 1 through 6.
The test will cover, in the book, this book, chapters 1 through 6. I am giving you brief overviews in these discussions. I'm not covering everything that's going to be on the test. Why is that? Well, because you have the book. Okay, so hopefully you're reading book. This is an internet course where you're expected to do a lot of this on your own. So make sure you have the book. It is open book. Obviously you're on your own. I know you're going to cheat. I know you're going to get together with friends and do whatever it is that you do. But bottom line is, I don't cover every single thing. I give you some of the major broader points of each chapter just to give it some context. Otherwise you're kind of on your own. Kelsey, is that it? Okay, so that's it for announcements. Keep hanging in there. Again, we have been responding to your questions and your queries. Today we're going to talk about a couple things. As it's laid out in the book, we're getting into the area where it's talking about specific areas which may determine mental health. So we're going to talk a little bit about education. We're going to talk about job insecurity. And we're going to talk about the neighborhood context of mental health. So we'll cover all these 3 in broad strokes. And you are responsible to look over the material in the book and be ready for that test on Wednesday. Again, so my final point, as it says on the syllabus, I am in my office and by my phone, Wednesdays from 1 to 2, right? Wednesdays from 1 to 2, I'm in my office by the phone and there physically if you need to stop by. Otherwise, we've been responding quickly to your emails. All right, so hang in there, keep it rolling. We have checked. It looks like everybody did pretty well getting discussion questions done and getting your first assignment uploaded. So keep that up and get ready for assignment 2 this week. All right. So this chapter 4 deals with how mental health is affected by the educational system. I think it was important for you to note and to think about a couple of things in this chapter. First, go back to this thing about an unequal society. So when we make, so what tends to be happening here is the same kind of causal link that the book tries to make in other areas, which is to say, if there is this thing called education, how is education linked to mental health outcomes? So on the surface of it, the initial question always becomes, well, if mental health has all these genetic physiological properties, how can it possibly be linked to something like education? So we have our group of talented graduate students in the room who are going to answer that question for me. What might be, right? What might be going on? How might it be that education has anything whatsoever to do with mental health outcomes?
Could be indirect through, so the more educated you are, maybe the more income you have, which leads to greater resources to deal with health.
So you can start to see how the way that I would prefer framing all this is to lump all of these chapters together, right? I think the best thing that I can do, give this a context, as you read the specifics of the book, hey, thanks, Reed, is to, I actually thought about that too, is to put these things together in what are often called pathways, right? It's easy to say that education is negatively correlated with mental health, right? With positive mental health. What that means is we may find in much of the empirical research, much of the empirical literature, that as people's level of education goes up, mental health, what did I just say? It's positively correlated?
You said positive.
Forget what I said. If it's positively correlated, we're going to say as education goes up, positive mental health would increase, right? So keeping it simple, as you get more education, your mental health tends to show improvements, right? So the more education you have, the less depression, the less anxiety, right? The less bipolar disorders. So all these things might be associated in some way, shape, or form with higher levels of education. So what we're talking about here then is, how is it that we find a pathway that takes us from education to mental health? In chapter 4, the thing to think about is as follows. In an unequal society, as the book states early on, resources are not evenly distributed. Resources are unevenly distributed. So in other words, all of society's social rewards are distributed in a manner by which it favors a certain group of people, and it comes at a disadvantage to certain groups of people. So let's think about the context of San Antonio, right? Most of us are from San Antonio. I know we got some of you are from the valley. We got transplants. We got kids that might be from other parts of the country. But I'm thinking that most of us are from San Antonio, maybe from Austin, maybe from Houston. But all of these cities have a very, very similar dynamic in that education is not evenly distributed. So I could think about, someone tell me a school, a public high school in San Antonio that might afford high levels of resources to their students.
Clark.
So, okay, what are the Clark? Clark are Cougars?
Yeah.
Are they Cougars? Not that kind of Cougars, all right? Clark are the Cougars. So we have one of our graduate students, when I said, what's a school that provides lots of resources, said Clark. And your research, your teaching assistant, Kelsey, the infamous Kelsey in the class, immediately proceeded to nod her head this way. So what is it, Kelsey? No resources at Clark.
I think Reagan, maybe.
Okay, so a lot of people would probably point to a place like Reagan High School.
Johnson,
Reagan, Brandeis,
Churchill.
You're right. Those are Brandeis is kind of getting themselves in the mix these days, right? As one of the more yuppie kind of schools. But in the sense of schools that have been around a bit longer, typically Reagan, Churchill, Johnson is a new school as well, relatively new school. So these are some of the schools that provide more tangible resources. How might those tangible resources, in other words, let's keep it simple. What might be happening at Reagan? Okay, wait. Tell me some schools that do a really shit job of providing resources for students.
Judson.
So why you gotta pick on Judson? Why you gotta pick on the brothers at Judson? At least they got a good football team. John Jay.
Would you say Lee?
Lee, right? Now Lee has those
They have
little private schools that are
East,
magnet schools that are associated with it. So you got like a school in the hood, kids from the hood, but then all like the rich white kids want to go there to go to the School of the Americas or whatever the shit that is, right? So that's an interesting case because it lumps all these kids together. But yeah, look, we can kid ourselves all we want. San Antonio Independent School District. we would be fooling ourselves to think that some of the schools in the San Antonio Independent School District